Hey guys, what's up? So here we are, we're back again with another combat achievement guide, and this time we're going to Phosani's Nightmare to do the Crush Hour combat achievement. And the whole point of this achievement is that we have to kill all of the husks and the parasites in a single hit. They all have to be one hit KO. And I want to point out the gear that I'm wearing right now, right? So this is absolute max crush, max strength. This is like the best gear that you can bring to Phosani's. And if you have this, if you have every piece of this, you don't need a new weapon swap, right? Your mace will be strong enough to take down both the parasites and the husks in a single hit each. However, this gear is pretty hard to get and it's pretty expensive, and especially if you're an Iron Man, right? Chances of having full Inquisitors with the mace are pretty low. So we're actually not going to be bringing this. We are going to be wearing a budget setup of bandos and just a bludgeon, and I'm just bringing a Slayer helm, right? I'm not even on task, so you can bring whatever helmet you want. But this is pretty budget gear that I think pretty much anyone can get and afford if you're doing Phosani. And yeah, the thing is if we're going to bring a budget setup, right, you need a second weapon switch. So I'm bringing a God Sword, right? And it's on Crush. And that's because the bludgeon isn't going to be strong enough to one-shot the parasites. So you need a secondary weapon. Any God Sword will do. I'm just bringing the SGS in case I want to get some healing or some prayer with its spec. But yeah, you'll need that second weapon. And if you want to one-shot those parasites in a single hit, you got to be super combated up and you got to have your piety on, right? The last thing to point out is if she summons a parasite while you're in your full mage gear doing the mage phase, you need to not only have your super combat and your piety on, but you have to switch back into your full melee gear setup so you have enough strength bonus to one-shot that parasite. But yeah, we're about to jump into it, and before we do, this is part of the Earn Your Master Hilt Combat Achievement series, where we're going to earn enough combat achievement points to finally get that Master Defender Hilt. So if you've been sticking around for a while, or if these guys have been helping you, throw me that like, throw me that sub, and let's go send Phosani's Nightmare and get the Crush Hour Combat Achievement. So, as I was kind of mentioning, we're going to be doing this in a budget gear setup. So the kill might take a little bit longer than a normal kill if you have other more efficient gear to use, but we're going to be doing the exact same strategy regardless of what gear you have or regardless of what gear you choose to bring. So what we're doing is we're just killing Phosani and we're basically waiting for either the parasites or the husks. And she just used a parasite on us right now. So we're waiting for the parasite to pop, right? Of course, we're going to drink our Stanfuse Serum, which we already did. But as soon as that parasite pops, boom, we put on that God Sword and we slap it down, right? And that will do an automatic one-hit KO. You can see we have our Super Combat Potion on, all the way boosted up to 118. We do have our Piety on, and that will allow, even in this budget gear setup, we're going to be able to one-shot those parasites. Which is really nice because not only is it going to make it so that they're not healing her and it drags this fight on even longer, but it shows that we really don't need that great of gear, right? I'm not even bringing don't even have a fire cape, so that's a little less strength bonus. But we can still one-shot those parasites. Now you can see we're in the mage phase right now. And the mage phase can get a little more sketchy if she throws that parasite out, right? Just because we have to do the full melee swap back, right? We need to put all of our melee gear back on if she decides to use a parasite during the mage phase. If she uses husks during the mage phase, we can just throw on our melee weapon, whatever it is, and it will one-shot those husks, right? They only have about 20 health, and they go down right away. And we're seeing that we actually have a parasite right now, so we're going to see how we deal with this parasite during the mage phase, right? So we got a couple of hits off, and it's time to switch back into our gear. So we throw on that melee gear really quick, dodge if necessary, and slap it with the God Sword. Right? Then we can put our mage gear back on and finish up those pillars, but it's very, very important that we swap back into the melee gear when we're dealing with a parasite during the mage phase. So phase 1 of the boss is down, and the rest of the phases will mostly be taken care of the exact same way. It just gets a little more stressful in phase 4 when you have to be dealing with her potentially turning your prayer off as well. But for the most part, we do have a light bearer in this budget setup, so we can actually be using our special attack weapon more or less twice per phase, which is really convenient when we do choose to bring that light bearer over a strength bonus ring. So at this point, like I said, we're just kind of waiting for the boss to either use husks or parasites. Otherwise, the kill is done exactly the same as it is in any other normal kill. We just need to be we need to pay a lot of attention to what our super combat is at. So you can see we have about a minute 45 left on our super combat. And if that starts running low, we always want to be super combated up, right? So like I said, we're in our mage phase, and just a one-way weapon swap will be more than enough to deal with those husks. We don't need to do the full 6 or 8-way or whatever we have melee swap if she does the husks during the mage phase. That only becomes necessary when she decides to use a parasite while we're already in our mage gear, right? So we have to get back out of that mage gear and throw our melee gear on to deal with it. Otherwise, we just won't have the strength bonus to handle it. But the second phase is going down very quickly. We're almost done with phase 2, and that means that we're about halfway through the Phosani Nightmare fight. So if you can make it through just a couple phases, and you get a chance to deal with the parasites on either phase, then you'll basically have the technique down, and at that point you just have to make it through that endurance test, right? Make it through that 8, 9, 10-minute fight, and just be constantly wary for when those parasites might show up and how we're going to deal with them when they come. The husks really aren't the big deal. The husks are really easy to deal with. It's all about the parasites in this combat achievement. But we can see our super combat was low. It was about to run out of its timer, so we did drink our second dose of divine super combat. And the fight is about halfway over at this point, so we're just continuing to look for those parasites and look for those husks. At this point, we don't want to get complacent, especially since we're halfway there, so we can see we have a parasite right now. Just make sure to drink that Sandfew, and we're waiting for it to pop up, right? So let's get ready with our God Sword. So we got our God Sword equipped right now, and as soon as that parasite pops back out, boom, slap it one shot, and we even used a special attack to get some of our stats back. So that is the nice benefit of bringing the SGS, the Ceradoming God Sword, over any of the other God Swords for this specific combat achievement. So if you've never done Phosani before and you're looking to get technique just to take Phosani down in the first place, I will actually have my guide for learning Phosani posted in the comments section, or rather the video description below. So if you're just trying to get into Phosani for your very first time, you can check that out. But as for the combat achievement we're dealing with, we're getting ready to go into that fourth phase right after this mage phase is down. And that'll be the end. By the time we finish the fourth phase, the combat achievement is basically finished. We just need to clutch out that kill and make it through her in rage phase. So we can see she's throwing another parasite on us right now, so we hurry up and we drink that Sandfew, or you can just click the orb. You might notice I don't actually drink the Sandfew. I just click my little HP orb when it goes pink. But we're going to throw that melee gear on. We see that we're super combated already. Our piety is on, and we slap it down. And I kind of forgot to make note earlier, but I'm not switching my offensive prayers during the mage phase. I'm just keeping piety on for the entire fight because it makes it one less thing to worry about, right? It means that if those parasites pop up, I know that my piety is always going to be on, and I don't accidentally forget to throw on the new prayer or switch my offensive prayer or anything like that. If I just camp piety, the mage phases might take a little bit longer, but it's one less thing to worry about for this one-off combat achievement. But you can see we're finishing up phase 3 right now. She's about to go down, this pillar's about to go down, and we will be approaching the fourth and final phase of the Phosani Nightmare fight. So here we go. We throw that blowpipe on and get ready to deal with those sleepwalkers really quick. There's only 3 right now, and we can get them all in time. And we're getting ready to finish up this 4th and final phase of the combat achievement, and the fight as a whole. So at this point, she can turn off our prayers. This is just standard for the 4th phase of the Phosani Nightmare fight. But we can't let that distract us from the fact that she could still throw a parasite on us. And if she throws that parasite on us, we need to be ready to switch our, or to put on our SGS as soon as possible. And it's not really a DPS race, right? So if you accidentally hit a mushroom or if you need to sacrifice a little DPS, it's not a big deal. The #1 top priority is making sure that we get our weapon switches off and that we're always super combated up in preparation for those parasites. So here are those husks, and they're very easy to deal with. All you have to do is have a melee weapon on, and they will go down in one shot as long as it's a crush style weapon, which I'm sure we're using. But at this point, we're getting ready to go into that mage phase, and our super combat potion is starting to get a little low, right? We only have about a minute left on our super combat potion, so we have a choice. We could either drink it early and be safe for the entire remainder of the fight, or we can try and draw it out, but we're gonna be needing to drink a dose of super combat potion before the fight is over anyway, because she's not gonna go down within the next 30 or 40 seconds. So at this point, we can really be drinking our super combat dose whenever we choose. And we'll do that definitely within the next 30 seconds before we get there. Because there is potential where she could still throw out a parasite during this last second mage phase. So it looks like there was actually a mushroom underneath her that I didn't see when walking through her, and we did take that yawn, but it's not really going to be a big deal. What could happen with the yawn is that it delays your attack if you're going for one of those parasites. But that really isn't our top priority because it doesn't matter how fast we kill the parasite. It only matters that we can take it down in a single hit. And with our SGS and our Super Combat Potion, we'll be able to do that no problem. So at this point, we're approaching the end of the fight, and if you have, if you're using budget gear, now especially is the time to get your HP all the way up. So we boosted ours to 115, we'll re-drink our Super Combat Potion, and we are ready to go for the Enrage phase. And as soon as the Enrage phase finishes up, the fight is over, and we're going to get our combat achievement complete. So here we go, we're entering the Enrage phase right now, and I will start with a double spec from my Void Waker. So spec number 1 and spec number 2. And if you feel your DPS is a little low, you can always blow pipe that first Sleepwalker or 2, and then get back onto the boss to finish him up. We have 61 HP, and they always do 15 damage at a time, so we know that 16, since it's not a multiple of 15, our heart is actually going to be perfect if we did have poor DPS. But that's it. The fight's over, and we're getting our Crush Hour combat achievement right now. So that's 5 more combat achievements that we have toward earning our Master Defender hilt. And yeah, that's Crush Hour. So the most important thing to note is to just make sure that you're always super combated up. If you're having trouble switching your offensive prayers or you're finding that you forget, you can just camp Piety the entire time. And other than that, just if you don't have max Crush and Strength, just make sure that you put on your God Sword or your Elder Maul or whatever weapon you're choosing to use for your one-shot weapon. But yeah, I hope you had fun. Hope you learned a lot, and I will see you boys in the next one. Peace.